think we can have a very good summit. I think we'll have a very tremendous summit. We want denuclearization, and I think he'll have a country that will set a lot of records for speed in terms of an economy.
President Trump's also said this is going to take time. There may have to be another summit. We may not get everything done this week. We hope we'll make a substantial step along the way.
President Trump and his Secretary of State Mike Pompeo both sounding optimistic notes in the run-up to the summit with North Korea's Kim Jong Un starting Wednesday in Vietnam. Let's bring in our panel. Chris Stirewalt, politics editor at Fox News, Democratic strategist Leslie Marshall, and Steve Hilton, host of The Next Revolution here on Fox News Channel. Well, President Trump heads to Hanoi, saying now he's in no rush, his quote, for North Korea to denuclearize. He'll be happy if they just continue the halt to any new missile tests or nuclear tests. Steve, is that enough for this summit? Can the U.S. live for a while with North Korea as a nuclear power just as long as it's not testing?
Yes, for a while. And that's the crucial point, because in many ways, the process here is the purpose. You see a lot of criticism of the president from the foreign policy establishment and his political rivals saying, well, there's not enough concrete steps here, nothing's really happening. But the fact that they're talking, that is a positive result. And frankly, if any other president, whether Republican or Democrat, had got to this point, first by getting China to participate in the pressure campaign, and then to really reboot this relationship so that we're talking rather than being on the brink of nuclear catastrophe, they'd be hailed as a foreign policy genius.
Well, let's pick up on this, the people in the cheap seats. Some members of Congress, Leslie, members of both parties are expressing concern that the president goes in this summit so anxious to have something that he can tout as a deal, as a victory. Here's Democratic Senator Ed Markey.
I think there's apprehension, in fact, amongst President Trump's own diplomats heading into this summit. Nothing is clear. And I think as a result, we could run the risk that Kim is given concessions which are not accompanied by real concessions that the United States is receiving in return from Kim and his regime.
Leslie, President Trump says he does not need advice from people who've been dealing with or talking about North Korea for years and haven't come up with anything.
The deal maker had a photo op and a good bump in the polls for himself, and we can't have that this time around.
You're talking about in Singapore.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's what we're going to see. I think we're going to see take two, if you will. Dan Coates said, and I agree with him 100%.
Director of National Intelligence.
Kim Jong Un needs to have the WMDs. That is his security blanket, if you will. And unless we are hard and push for full, I disagree with Steve on this, unless we are hard and push for full denuclearization, we are not taking baby steps toward our goal, because in a sense, in this regard, Kim Jong Un is holding the cards, and we're not getting anywhere. This is, what kind of a deal do we have? Really nothing, and I fear that we will have that again if, as we see, the Secretary of State and the President have backpedaled a bit already.
Well, as we just saw, the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was on Fox News Sunday yesterday, off camera. Chris, I asked him, why a two-day summit? And he said, because if they have progress on the first day, they're having a one-on-one meeting for some period of time. He said, we want to give ourselves the time that all of us, meaning him and the other diplomats on both sides, can get together and try to put what they've agreed to on paper, work it out so that there's a concrete statement. What do you think of the chances that this won't be just an intention to denuclearize, but there'll be some meat on the bones this time?
So look, the time is always on the side of the North Koreans, and it has been since the end of the Korean conflict, and that's how they play. As long as they can just keep going a little bit longer, they can make it into the next thing. We contrast what we're doing in North Korea with what we're doing in Venezuela. So the message from Senator Marco Rubio and others to Maduro, get out or get dead. That's what's going to happen to you. You're either going to get out or you're going to get dead. In North Korea, what they say is stay in and get rich. Why don't you come to Vietnam? See how prosperous Vietnam has become. Be like us. And the president's promise to Kim is always, come on, play ball with me and you're going to end up rich. Your country's going to end up rich and you're going to see quick growth. Whether or not that's a real thing, I don't know.
Less than 1 week after we began this campaign, we now have 1 million volunteers in every congressional district in this country who are prepared to roll up their sleeves and get to work to make sure that we win the Democratic nomination, that we defeat Trump.
Very catchy music. Senator Bernie Sanders raising impressive amounts of money and support in just the opening days of his presidential campaign. And we're back now with our panel to discuss the latest on the presidential field. Chris, there was some feeling when this all started that Democratic voters might like Bernie Sanders' ideas, but want them in a new bottle, a fresher face to express those ideas. But he is raising impressive amounts of money, and those million volunteers, it shows a lot of people from 2016 are supporting him, and they say a third of those volunteers are people that weren't signed up to the Bernie campaign in 2016. What does that tell us?
Look, Bernie Sanders will not be made to get out of this race. You might not even get Bernie Sanders out of this race after he loses New Hampshire, because I bet he'll lose New Hampshire to Elizabeth Warren. But there's no way to get him out. He's got a solid fundraising base. He has grassroots, and he does. It's not like he's worried about the next run. He's 77. It's not like he's thinking about 2024. So Bernie Sanders will do what he did last time, which is he's going to raise $1 bajillion. He's going to get all the clicktivists, everybody clicking away to feel virtuous as they click their computer mouse. But Democrats have to reconcile themselves to one fact. Bernie Sanders is not going to go away, and he's going to do a lot of damage to this field as he rolls on.
Well, damage to the field is in the eyes of the beholder.
True.
But yes, okay. So there is a continuing debate among the Democratic field, and certainly Republican attacks on the Democratic field, about some of the big ideas they're pushing. I talked about it with Kirsten Gillibrand here, the Green New Deal, Medicare for All, several other ideas. Senator Kamala Harris, who is one of the front runners for the campaign, was confronted on that this weekend. Take a look.
It's not about a cost, it's about an investment. And then the question should be, is it worth the cost in terms of the investment potential? Are we going to get back more than we put in?
It's not about the cost, it's about the investment. Leslie, when you're talking about not billions of dollars, but trillions of dollars for each one of these programs, is that going to fly?
No, I disagree with my fellow Democrat on that. It does come down to the cost, because what's the budget? The cost is going to equal whether you're going to get votes or not, up or down, and that's within the Democratic Party as well. And all of this, whether you have Bernie and all of these different attitudes, people that say, okay, we're for Medicare for all, we're for raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour across the board. We're not seeing specifics when it comes to things like climate change from certain candidates. And we're also hearing what we just heard from Senator Harris, which is the cost doesn't matter when it does. This, I think, is going to cause further divisions within the Democratic Party, and it could help reelect Donald Trump and make him a two-term president as opposed to one, which the Democrats dearly hope.
That's interesting coming from you. Steve, I asked the DNC chair, Tom Perez, on Fox News Sunday this weekend about President Trump going after Democrats, not just for spending a lot of money, high taxes, but socialism.
Yeah.
Here's how he pushed back.
Social Security, when it was being debated, you had Republicans calling it socialism. The minimum wage in 1938, you had Republicans calling it socialism. Medicare, Ronald Reagan said, and I quote, Medicare will lead to socialized medicine. Medicare will lead to socialism in America. Why do they do that? Because they're wrong on the issues.
Steve, is that an effective pushback on the socialism issue?
No, because it may be accurate history, but it doesn't really affect the future choice that people have to make. And it's interesting. I agree with what Leslie just said, because it's astonishing, really, how easily and quickly and lightly these leading Democratic contenders have signed up to positions that are going to become a real liability come the general election. And they may say at this point, well, we're just signing up to the big ideas. It's all about the details. And over time, they can put the details in and claim that it's not as threatening to people. But it seems to me that already they've given the president enough ammunition to paint them as far, far to the left of what Americans have seen before, even with those historical examples.
Chris, I got less than a minute left. I want to squeeze one more thing in. More talk from the Democrats about reparations. Elizabeth Warren said that shouldn't just be descendants of slavery. It should also include Native Americans. Is that a bridge way too far, the whole reparations issue for Democrats?
New York Times, great piece today talking about the moderate Democrats from moderate districts that went home this week to talk to constituents. They got an earful. Why are you doing this? Why are you talking like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? Why are you doing these things? Public Opinion Strategy is probably the best Republican pollster firm, so it's a partisan poll. But when they looked at voters in the suburbs, Democrats are now down to a 7-point disadvantage in the generic ballot. That tells me that this message, things like reparations, things like that, are having a consequence with the very voters that put the Democrats in charge in the House.
All right. That's it for the panel. Thank you all.